Hi, welcome to the Penguin Post newspaper by kids. Today we are interviewing Ted Daeschler. He is a paleontologist working at Drexel University. Let's ask him some questions.
Tell us about what you study and explore.
Thanks for asking. I am a paleontologist, and so I study fossil animals. When you're a professional paleontologist, you end up focusing on sort of a very specific group of animals, or sometimes a very specific time period in the history of life. And I have focused, looking way back in time, at the animals that lived during the Devonian period. So we're looking back almost 390 million years ago. And I've got to explore some really cool places looking for those fossils. Pennsylvania, which is where I'm calling you from, but also in Antarctica, 2 seasons in Antarctica, which is a wild place to do paleontology, as you can imagine. Very cold, but there are rocks exposed at the surface. And also up in northern Canada, where we've had really good luck with some of our fossil discoveries. So I'm a specialist in the Devonian period.
How did you become interested in fish fossils?
Great question. So when I was a student, I got really interested in paleontology while I was in college. I was a geology major. Geology is sort of one of the foundation pieces that helps you with paleontology, because in geology you study the rocks, and of course fossils are found in rock layers. So people get into paleontology through geology and through biology. So I was looking, after I was an undergraduate, I went to graduate school, which is what you do if you're continuing along to sort of become a professor, to be an academic and do research. And I was looking for a project in Pennsylvania because I had started a family. I had some kids, and I didn't want to, have to travel very far to do a research project. And here in Pennsylvania, we have old rocks, including a lot of rocks from the Devonian period, also called the Age of Fishes, Amelie. Then that's why you asked a very good question. And so from that Devonian, from those rocks in the Devonian here in Pennsylvania, I started to find really interesting fossil fishes, some of which actually are right at the step in the evolution where they are starting to develop limbs, arms and legs from the fins that we would see in certain kinds of fishes. So I'm finding a lot of diversity, a lot of different kinds of fish, but particularly interested in those that are developing features that would allow the first animals to come on land, which is kind of fun. Which you don't think of as fishes, but that was the transition that we're looking at all those many millions of years ago.
What would you tell kids our age that would get them excited about paleontology? What should they do to prepare?
So yeah, paleontology is a really interesting field. I love it because you get to go outdoors, you get to work with your hands, you get to explore and discover. So those are all great things. But there's also a lot, absolutely, that you do in your lab, and you teach and all that kind of things as well. But so the kinds of things, so I think it's exciting. I think you guys must think it's exciting too. Dinosaurs, other prehistoric animals, just imagining what the world was like all those many millions of years ago. So I think paleontology doesn't need to find ways to be exciting for people like you. I think it is exciting, and I hope you think so too. But the kinds of things that kids your age might like do that gives you a little taste of like what paleontology is all about is like learn anatomy, like learn skeletons. I don't know if you guys ever ever find bones, like outside, depends where you live. You might find bones of a deer, or you find some teeth on the beach, or whatever it might be. Sometimes it's really fun to collect and identify those things. Guess what? On Thanksgiving, just keep those turkey bones, because turkey is just, it's a flying dinosaur. Birds are a kind of a dinosaur. and they evolved from dinosaurs way back in the Mesozoic period. So learn anatomy, learn your own anatomy, the bones, that make up your skeleton, because we're all designed very similarly, all backboned animals. And so I find that anatomy, meaning, you know, just all those parts, skeletons and everything, are one way to learn a lot about, that will be useful if you want to learn more about paleontology. And the other thing is, I really love, I teach geology. I love the idea that you can learn about rocks, and by learning about rocks, it tells you about the history of the earth. And so that's the other thing, that even as a hobby, you know, collecting rocks and asking questions about them, and trying to figure things out, or taking them to your teacher and saying, why is this rock important? Some teachers may not know, but you can find things like that out. So be curious about rocks and geology, and maybe learn a little bit about anatomy, about your own body, the skeletons, and the skeletons of other animals. So that's the kind of stuff I think that keeps you excited about paleontology.
What is your favorite vertebrate fossil?
My favorite, what kind of fossil?
Vertebrate.
Oh, good, great. Glad you used that word, vertebrate, the backboned animals. So I have to say one of the Devonian fossils that we've discovered. Now, I've been working in this field for a long time, gosh, way before you guys were born, and we've discovered a lot of different stuff, and all of it is really fun and exciting, because you're finding parts of animals that are, you know, telling that story of the history of life. It's like detective work, and it's all exciting. And so I have great memories from a lot of things. I think the animal that we discovered that has made the most impact on our science, meaning we got some really important scientific publications, meaning the papers that we write to describe to all the other scientists out there about the fossils that we found. The ones that have had the biggest impact are based on some fossils that we found up in the northern part of Canada from the Devonian age. And we named this animal, it's an animal that had never been found before. We named it Tiktaalik rosea. And Tiktaalik is right at that transition between finned animals, call them fish, and limbed animals, we call them tetrapods. And it's in that transition zone. So my favorite fossil of a vertebrate that I have found and worked on is Tiktaalik rosea. Let me spell that for you. It's a tricky one. It's Tiktaalik, Tiktaalik. And it's actually a word from the Inuit language, which are the people who live up in that area of northernmost Canada where we do the work.
What is your favorite thing you have discovered?
Yeah, so Tiktaalik, that same story, I think, is what I would say about, so yes, I sort of took the previous question from Tori as like discovery that I had made. And so Tiktaalik is something, well, myself and my team, and I always want to emphasize that all of the discoveries that we make are a team of people. I mean, it doesn't really matter who, if we get ourselves to whether there's 2 of us or 6 of us, which is generally the size of our teams, 2 to 6 people when we go on these trips to collect fossils. It's a group effort. It doesn't matter who sees it first or anything. It's a group effort. But anyway, so I'd say Tiktaalik rosea, Emily, is like the favorite fossil I found. And I'll back up to Tori's question a little bit. And now that I think about it in a more broad sense, if you're letting me talk about any fossils that are known, whether I've worked on them or not, I think one of the coolest fossils out there is Archaeopteryx, which is another tricky word. Archaeopteryx lithographica, which is a scientific name for a bird-like fossil from the Jurassic period. It was discovered in Germany 150 years ago, more than 150 years ago. And it actually shows a really cool transition between small meat-eating dinosaurs and the first birds. So it's right on that transition. So you may get the impression, I love transitions in the fossil record, kind of the animals that span the gaps between major groups that we know today. If we go back in time, we can find before those groups were distinct, we can find the animals that sort of are transitioning or are part of each, I guess is what I'm trying to say. So great, thanks for those two questions. I get them that they're a little different. I love Archaeopteryx lithographica, but among the discoveries that I've made, it's Tiktaalik rosé that I think is the most exciting.
Where do you go to find fossils?
So there's a few things that go into the decision about where to find fossils. First, you generally, in my kind of job, where, as I said when I started, I have a specialty, right? And that's the Devonian time period. So I need to go places where there is Devonian age rock, in layers at the surface. Are you guys in California? Did I get that? Okay. So guess what? No Devonian rock in California. I don't want to come to California to look for fossils, but there are other fossils in California, some great ones from some of the younger time periods, especially. And I have looked for fossils in California from what's called the Miocene time period, which is when there were horses and camels and all sorts of really cool things running around, mammals running around California, up in the Bay Area near San Francisco. But anyway, so when we're deciding where to look for fossils, we look for fossils that are the age, we look for rocks that are the age of the kinds of animals we're interested in. We look for places where those rocks can be seen, right? I can't go find the fossils if those layers with the fossils are deeply buried in the earth. I have to go to places where the rocks are exposed, is what we call it. And you guys may notice sometimes when you're driving around in the car or hiking or something, you find like places where you can actually see the layers of rock. So you need to be able to see the bedrock of the right age. And it's important that we have permission to be at those places. So is it someplace we can get permission to go? Is it private property? Is it public property? Is it the side of a highway? I collect fossils on the sides of highways where the highway building has exposed layers of rock. So the most important things, though, to answer your question, Carmen, is the age. I go to places where the age of the rock and the rocks are well exposed are perfect for what I need to do my work.
What does your day look like when you're not out digging for fossils?
Yeah, boy, Tori, I wish I could dig for fossils every day, but I don't, and I can't. And honestly, I would say in a given year, if I'm lucky, I spend about a month collecting fossils, right? And so what happens those other 11 months? Lots of other things. So I work in a museum, the Academy of Natural Sciences, which is part of Drexel University. At the museum, we have a lab where we prepare the fossils, which means digging all the rock off from around the fossil bones and teeth and skulls and preserving that so that we can study it. That's a very slow process. We actually have a guy, his name is Fred. He's the fossil preparator, and that's his job, and he's really good at it. It takes incredible patience. Like it's just like working with small tools and stuff. So, but I help run the lab to do fossil preparation. We're in a museum, so I help with the educational programs in the museum. We have a collection of all the fossils that have been collected and come to the Academy of Natural Sciences over the 200-year history of the museum. It's actually the oldest museum in the country here in Philadelphia. And so that collection, guess what? My fossils get put there on drawers unless they get sent back to the country where we collected them, which we do sometimes, oftentimes. There's also collections from Thomas Jefferson, President Thomas Jefferson. So we have collections from so much period of time of human history, of science going on. So I have these collections to take care of as well. And then the other piece I want to mention is that I teach at the university, Drexel University. And so I have college age students and I teach some classes in geosciences. So my day, I can't say any one day is the same. Every day is a little different, and it makes it exciting. And but to your point of asking the question, I'm not actually doing that kind of that stuff that you imagine of being out there with a hat on and cracking rock and making discoveries all the time. It's really just a small part of the time. But you know what? That's fine, because it's a job and you have to do all different aspects of the job, not just the really fun part.
Can you tell us about the Devonian period and why are you interested in studying it?
Great. Okay. Yeah. So when we look at the long history of life on Earth, and there's been this really long history, we all know, for example, the time period, you know, Jurassic and Cretaceous. That's when dinosaurs lived. And that was from about 65 going back to almost 200 million years or so ago. And they call that the age of reptiles. And before that time, there's this whole long period of time where a lot was going on. There weren't reptiles particularly, but so if we look back to the Devonian period, there were lots of fishes. Just like we can call something the age of reptiles in the more recent time frame, or even the age of mammals. The Devonian is sometimes called the age of fishes. And there were no animals with arms and legs walking around on land, but there were lots of fishes in the water, all different kinds, many of them not like anything that we know today, which is really exciting. Whole groups of things that you wouldn't hardly recognize if you saw it today. And then, of course, there was great stuff going on Earth with all the invertebrates, so all the animals that have shells and soft bodies and things, so they don't have a skeleton inside their body. But lots of diversity of invertebrates and plants, lots of fossil plants of things different from today too. So that's the Devonian. The Devonian was sort of, in my mind, it was different from today, but in some ways it was the beginnings of some of the things that began to change to lead us toward what we see today. And of course, everything is changing all the time. So even what we see in nature today is slowly but surely changing. But it changes so slowly that we don't really see it with our eyes. So that's why paleontologists are so interested in having a longer period of time when we can look at changes on the Earth. And that's what we do. We look at the evidence that the rocks tell us and the fossils in the rocks about the history of the Earth. Because you and I can't like sit down and watch animals change through time or watch continents move slowly across the surface of the Earth. So I think the Devonian is just a really interesting time in the long history of changes on the Earth. And so it's been a great place, and it's sort of my specialty now. Although I do love all time periods, I really do, in the history of life. I just love studying the history of life in general. But yeah, the Devonian is obviously my favorite.
Who is your favorite paleontologist?
Oh, what a great question. Gosh, you know, there's definitely some historical figures that come to mind. And the person, it's a Philadelphia person. His name was Joseph Leidy, Leidy. He was a great early paleontologist. I mean, when I look back at it, you guys probably know more about paleontology than Joseph Leidy did, because it was so long. He was active from the 1840s to the 1890s, and so that's a long time ago, right? But he was a terrific scientist who was doing like some of the first work on lots of fossils that were being collected in the American West as that was being explored. And he was very sensible in the way that he looked at those fossils. He understood anatomy really well. You could give him a skull and he'd say, well, I don't know what that is, but it's got teeth that are similar to a horse. So I'm sure it's a relative of horses, but it lived long ago. So anyway, he was very logical and a very good anatomist. And so he's kind of my hero. He was also very factual about things. He didn't kind of go off with wild ideas and theories and all that kind of stuff. He was very solid factual. Now, I got to say that there are wonderful paleontologists in the world today. I want you to understand that there are an awful lot of women who are professional paleontologists now too. People of different races who are professional paleontologists. And so it's very important that we see everybody, that the diversity of people, we need everybody's ideas about the history of life on Earth. And it's stuff that, I don't know, I just find interesting. And I think other people do as well. I hope you guys do. I hope you find, studying the history of life on Earth interesting. It really is cool.
That was so cool. We learned a lot from you, and thank you for your time. Bye.
Thank you all very much. I really enjoyed talking to you. Good luck with the paper.